easier. We're going to share some things, and then what we'd like you to do is answer some discussion prompts based on each chunk of the topics that we present. And what's nice about it is not only are you going to be able to contribute to the discussion, but you're going to be able to see what everyone else is responding to based on that question. It's real simple. Again, every time you complete one of these tasks, consider it another entry into the raffle. So you're really getting into the raffle bowl quite a bit. You have a chance to win some really cool prizes. So I encourage you to do that. So getting back to our session.
Okay.
There you go.
Is everybody connected now?
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so why are we here today? You know, I want you to think about 8 years ago. I remember 8 years ago, the people that were doing BYOD or the people that were discussing doing one-to-ones, you know, just 8 years ago, they were the trailblazers. This was what we all wanted to do, but nobody was sure about how we were going to accomplish it. And if you look around the room today, there isn't a district that is not implementing some kind of innovative technology. We have all jumped into the pool thinking about 21st century learning. What are the things we need? And we have done BYODs. We have brought one-to-one implementations. We have worked on our network and our Wi-Fi access, internet access in the schools. We are all moving, and we're moving fast. In fact, we're moving so fast that now we can begin to really think about data-informed learning. We can really focus on, are all my students mastering the standards? How many of them need a little help on the standards we were working on this week versus the ones that can keep moving forward? We're really getting to the point of maturity where we're demanding a lot more from technology. And this is what this conversation today is about. It isn't just about making teaching and learning easier, but making it easier for teachers to personalize, to bring their learning and their teaching practices to the 21st century, to giving the students voice and choice, to providing multiple options so that those who do better by doing can do that, those who need more visuals can do that, so that we can offer teaching and learning opportunities for each student the way they need it. And we are providing teachers with the data they can use to continue to support the students where they're at and in the ways that they need support. So this is what this session is going to be about. So how do we make it easier for teachers?
So this is the first chunk in our breakfast session. So some slides that we're going to show you, and then there'll be a discussion prompt at the end.
So what can we offer? What can technology do for teachers to really help what you could potentially personalize without technology, but not at scale, right? And not when the differences between the skills and the places where your students are too big. So when we're talking about bridging gaps, addressing different needs of multiple different students, and when we're talking about scaling in large districts or urban districts or rural districts, then we need a systems approach to support and help the teacher. So she has at the fingertips the tools that she needs in order to be able to facilitate that without demanding more time on his or her part. And that's what this is about. The first thing I wanted to talk about is most of us produce planning guides to help our teachers, to support them and help them build good lesson plans. And the first thing that you can do when you adopt a platform such as itslearning is that static planning guide now becomes a flexible planning guide. And in this particular case with the lesson planner, when you create a lesson plan and you add the learning standards of your district and your state into that particular lesson, automatically everything in that lesson is going to be linked to those learning standards. So from the beginning, you're already streamlining that teacher effort. And when you click add resources, we can move to the other one, then you can go, the resources automatically would influence every resource you add to that lesson planner. So before we go to the library, for example, I want to give you an example of what this might do for your districts. If you have a curriculum department in central office, or you have your star teachers, your teacher leaders, and you're implementing an LMS, these teacher leaders and these central office specialists can create a master course, like a template, aligned to standards. So you can push that to every teacher that is teaching that particular course in your district. Now teachers are not starting from scratch. They're starting from a good, solid sequence of lessons, and then that teacher can modify that copy of the course, of the plan, to the way that she or he prefers to teach. But you're already making it easier to bring their teaching to the 21st century. And then in our library, this is one of the things that made me fall in love with this system. In addition to having open educational resources readily available from Guru in the library, districts can create content by teachers, and they can also bring their adopted content from the main publishers, and you can ingest them into your library, into the It's Learning library, as a, quote, thing common cartridge. When you do a search in the library, could you go back one screen?
Sure, sorry.
When you do a search in the library, you put a keyword, in this case it just says algebra, and it populates all the different learning objects you have from multiple different publishers and resources and teachers. And then you can reduce your search by adding learning objectives, and now all of a sudden that list becomes a lot smaller. And now you have learning objects, activities, lessons, assignments, plans, etc. for that particular topic, and learning standards from multiple sources. Focus on diversity and being able to offer your students multiple ways of learning at the same time without making it a monumental effort. So if you go to the next slide, then this is an example of all the different content Houston ISD was able to ingest into the It's Learning library. And what's unique about this, you can go to the Discovery Education or the Innovation search window and do a search there if you want. But you can also just search for a keyword like such as cells or a particular learning objective. And when you put that in this library, then if you go to, I think it's the one before, go to the one before, then you find content from all those different publishers and open educational resources that address that particular topic and standard. So you, in fact, can create a playlist for your class that includes multiple modes of learning. You can think about universal design for learning. You can think about your students that are reading at different levels, so they can read about the same topic, but at different grade levels, etc. So now we can move forward. And move forward. Yes, so the result is, here's Mr. Torres, and he's teaching fractions, but he knows that Maria, click again, learns better with a specific type of tools, and she reads a lot, and so she'll be okay with that. But then Juan is more of a visual learner, not so much a reader, and he's a collaborative learner. So Mr. Torres is able to provide them with different activities or different sources of content to adapt to the way that they learn. In the end, they both are doing and learning fractions. So how does this work? Very quickly, because I'm not intending to make you technologists, but this is a really interesting difference. One thing is to create a single sign-on to an entire book with its entire scope and sequence, and that is helpful too. So in Houston, we did that. You have a single sign-on to every textbook where a teacher can see the entire course, scope, and sequence, etc. But through the common cartridge, what you have is you get the content of an entire book into the library, but it's divided into discrete segments that are searchable by keywords and standards. And that's how you can find content for a particular learning objective from Pearson, McGraw-Hill, HMH, Novation, Discovery Education, etc. So if you go to the next slide, the Think Common cartridge does the same thing. It divides the book into chunks or discrete learning objects, and you can search for, instead of an entire book, you can go to a specific page, as if you had gone to the index of the book to find the topic and identified exactly the pages you needed for today's lesson. The beauty of the Think Common cartridge, however, is the content doesn't actually reside physically in It's Learning. It remains in the publisher's server, and publishers really like that because it protects their intellectual property. So it makes it easier for publishers to work with you and to make sure you can bring all your content into one library, one single search spot, to find content from all your publishers and providers. So we go to the third screen. The other standard that is really helpful for us is either LTI or single sign-on. And our LTI links include not just content, but also common and very lovely apps that we all use in K-12, like BrainPop and other apps. And the teachers don't know how this is happening, but they can go here and BrainPop opens, or the different apps open. So basically, your teachers log into itslearning, go to the library, and they can find everything in one single place. So making teachers' lives easier. We can keep going now. So the critical thing here, in the case of Houston, we had some teachers that were very sophisticated. They could create their own lesson plans. They could bring in content from multiple sources to personalize, to individualize, to differentiate. Some teachers were not ready for that yet. They have access to the entire book, and they just follow the book the way the book is. So you're providing services to all your teachers, no matter where they are. Okay.
So we're trying to point out some things about our platform that really does make teaching a little more efficient and a little bit more easier. And what we wanted to share with you is the other aspect of teaching that we know is important, and that is teachers should be monitoring student progress. They should be addressing performance needs on a regular and consistent basis. So on the itslearning platform, there's a tool that allows you to retrieve a learning objectives report on your class, on your individual students. So right here, if you notice the orange circles, I'm clicking on the learning objectives progress report, and what happens is a screen appears. The screen identifies all the standards that you're teaching for that course. You're able to then open up one of those standards and start to look at your class on an individual basis and determine who's making performance aligned to that standard and who's struggling. On this screen here, there's a couple students that are struggling. The library aspects that Beatriz was just sharing plays a part in this performance report as well. It helps the teacher find things in the library that will immediately address some performance needs of students who are struggling with standards. So it goes to the library and looks for personalized digital content that's already aligned to that standard that kids are struggling with, and it starts to reveal those resources for students and for teachers. And that teacher can then assign those digital content items on an individual and personal way to those students who are struggling. It doesn't automatically assign. The teacher still has that opportunity to look at the many resources that have popped up and then make some decisions based on the learning styles, the preferences, and so on of those students who are struggling. But from there, immediately assign a personalized task, not for the whole class, but for those kids that are struggling. Does that make sense? Real simple. Another tool that we feel our platform does a great job at in terms of making teaching more efficient and easier for the teacher.
So it says 2 students do not meet. Here are the 2 students. The recommendations engine automatically pulls up a couple of lessons that are available in the library for reteaching, but then the teacher can manually modify those if she or he chooses to do that. And the teacher could also consult with the student, and they could decide together, and they can search for other resources that are in the library and decide which one is the best tool for that.
So think of what's showing up. All of those personalized tasks are starting to be revealed based on everything that you've loaded from your adopted publishers, your digital content that you're paying a subscription for. Also, if you have open educational resources in the library, and if you have teacher-created content, all of that stuff is being recommended to the teacher to look at and use for these students who are struggling with a particular standard.
And then the system allows you to send, and it automatically creates a message that you can modify and personalize if you choose to, and it also allows you to add a follow-up activity. So when that student is finished rereading or viewing the video or whatever it is that you assigned, you can add another assignment or another small quiz or some kind of assessment to see if they have moved the needle.
Yeah, I always think of that instructional cycle where you plan for instruction, you teach, you monitor progress, you reteach, you reassess. So that's what this recommendation engine is meant to do. So it's not just about throwing more content at a student and hoping it sticks, but when you add an activity, you can add some sort of an assessment item to see whether or not those new personalized tasks really have made an impact or not.
Right. So that's it. But there's another really neat feature, and it's like, how do you bring the parents, the teacher, and the student together to work on how that student is progressing and supporting that student? And so I really like the personalized cards that itslearning has. And if you notice at the top, and these slides are available to you in that course we've given you, there is about activities, gradebook, attendance, behavior, learning objectives. And so here's Annabelle Belen's activities. The parent can come in here and see all their children that are in the district. And they can see what are the assignments their children have submitted recently. And then they can also see what are the assessments that are coming in and what are the grades that the student has. And they can also see a report of standards mastery. What are the standards that Anna Belen has been able to master and which are the ones where she's struggling? The parent can view this very quickly and then they can send a text message to the teacher inside the platform and or to the student.
Yeah, this might date me a little bit. Even though I'm an old guy, I consider myself a modern educator, but some of you in the room might remember the cumulative folder room where the cum folders were kept and you pulled out those file cabinets. That stuff was good to look at, but it wasn't really current. This is a cumulative folder. It's very, very current, and you're able to immediately drill right into a student and see all of those things that used to be sitting in a cum folder, but that are that much more current, very modern. A good way to look if you're having child study, if you're having a parent conference, lots of opportunities to use these just-in-time data cards that are sitting there in the platform as well. The Standards Mastery Report is another nice view that teachers are able to immediately see. They can go in and actually quickly look at each student to see how well they're performing based on standards.
But this particular snapshot shows every single lesson in the course and every single student in the course. And in one view, you can see for every one of your lessons, how many students have mastered and how many students have not mastered yet. Focus on progress, right? And then in the next screen, you have yet another snapshot that informs how well have you set up and scaffolded your lessons? Because this tells you of all the learning objectives that you have in your course, how many of those do you actually have resources for in your lesson planner? And the ones that are white here, that means I haven't added content for those two standards in my course yet. So it's constant information for the teacher to determine how well is her classroom set up and how well her students are doing, and who are the students that need support immediately, and the same kind of information to the parent immediately. So when the parents log on to the platform, they see all their students and where are the students progressing and where they need a little help.
Yeah, this report here is phenomenal for a teacher, especially if you're looking for gaps in your instruction. If students aren't performing to a particular standard, you can quickly look at this report to see if you have a sufficient amount of experiences, assignments, content to that standard. This report would give you that. So, would you agree that engaging and communicating with students is a teacher task as well? Again, an old guy, but I remember Madeline Hunter used to talk about you need a hook, you need an anticipatory set to bring kids in, right? You need to engage kids in meaningful ways so that they want to participate in your content for the course that you're assigned to teach. Our platform does a phenomenal job with this. First of all, when students log on to the platform, you can set that profile to land at a home page. And the home page aggregates all of the tasks, all of the assignments, all of the new news and notification of all of the courses that they're enrolled in. Some kids just want to get at it. They want to get finished what they're assigned to get finished. And the home page will do that. But there's other opportunities as well. Very flexible interface, building the interface for that emergent reader, as well as that strong reader. So all the way from early childhood years, kindergarten through high school, you have this ability to really create some flexible views that invite and engage students in.
There's one more view.
And then finally, the idea of grabbing students before you begin your instruction. There are bulletins that are another functionality on the platform where you can start to engage kids from the dashboard of the course, from the course overview. You can alert them, you can provide media to them about topics that you're about ready to present. Any of you that are doing flip learning where you're trying to push content to students before they come into class, you're able to do that on bulletins as well. And you can turn on comments so that students start interacting before you even begin your instruction if you use some of the bulletins. So planning for instruction, please come by the booth. Again, it's 2352. Our planner does a phenomenal job of allowing teachers to sequence instruction, and something new to the platform for back to school, we call it a play plan. When you build in our instructional planner as a teacher and you build a series of lessons, the student view is a play plan, and there's a button that says start, and it will walk them through all of the instruction that you've designed as a teacher. The content, the learning activities, the assessments, you put them into that order, and they simply click on start and they follow that instructional sequence that you've established as a teacher. Promoting student engagement and active learning, lots of tools here. Everything from embedded Microsoft Office tools directly on the platform. If you're using Zoom or Office Mix as a way to allow students to curate and create, those are built directly in the platform. But along with that, highly engaging tools for building assignments, discussions, surveys and polls. If you want synchronous conferencing, those are all native to the application, and they're meant to really be tools for the teacher and the students to use to learn, to engage, and to communicate with each other. Another facet that I think helps making teaching easier. Teachers are a profession. Certainly this idea of continuous growth in the profession is important. Many of our customers use the platform for learning as an adult and adult learning. So anyone involved with compliance training? Sure. You can build these courses right on the platform. So now you have teachers not only using the platform to teach the students that they're assigned to, but they're also students in the platform too. And they're learning that experience. So through compliance training, PD learning, aligning that learning to professional practice objectives is certainly a capability as well. We have discussions, conferencing, e-portfolios, blogs, dialogues, allowing teachers to share lesson plans. Faculty meetings. Anyone a school administrator in here, principal? No reason why you can't flip or blend your faculty meetings. We have many of our customers doing that as well. I was a notorious principal for pulling folks in environments like this and then having them read things together and having conversations. No need to do that with an LMS like ours. You can certainly flip your faculty meetings. And I think teachers appreciate that a whole lot more as well.
So, in other words, what It's Learning provides is like a platform where all the communication and the engaged activities can occur between the teachers, the administrators, the students, and the parents. And every role, they have something to do that adds value to their interactions and the learning process. So here's like a very succinct list of all the things that people can do. I would like to point to you that the students also can, if your district decides, the students can have access to the digital library. And the students, you can teach them how to do a search. So you can give them a topic, and you can have the students perform that search and then work with them to help them determine which of the things they find in that library are most valuable and appropriate for the specific lesson. So you would be also teaching them 21st century learning skills, how to find content that is appropriate and valid for the particular lesson and the information they're trying to get from the library. So here's your first task.
So we are going to try to, with the microphone, maybe ask one or two people. But on the course, in the first section, there's a discussion thread. It's called Making Teaching Easier. This question is posted here. So just take a moment and respond to that question. And Ernesto, maybe if you grab the mic, we could ask if somebody wants to step away from the technology and maybe just
So based on the problems that you're trying to resolve in your district and the continuum where you are, you know, in the continuum from teacher-centered instruction to learner-centered instruction, what are some of the uses that these tools can provide your teachers with or your parents with to improve that process, to accelerate your development towards a learner-centered environment?
Yeah, anything resonate with anyone? Ernesto, thank you.
Well, in our district, we struggle with actually using data to drive instruction, which might seem kind of wild, but we're kind of stuck in the Stone Age and moving forward. So a tool like this would certainly help with that.
Great, thanks.
Can you tell us your name and your district?
Mary Carlton, I'm from Seattle Hebrew Academy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Amy Hansen, New Hampshire. We currently use itslearning, and I think one of the nice things for it is that it's a nice communication tool for parents to be able to see what the students are working on and, you know, have a better picture. I work in the elementary school, so the communication is a little bit tough as to what they're working on. So it's a nice tool for that also.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so if you've had a chance to respond to that first discussion, we're going to move on. And some of those things, especially with the data, we are going to share with you the various ways that you can achieve data-driven instruction from the perspective of a student, a learner, from the perspective of a teacher, and also the perspective of a school and district administrator. So we have those sections as well. So, Section 2, the 21st century skills and their competencies. So this is my job. I've got a few famous folks up here. See if you recognize some of them. Y'all should know the guy up there in the upper corner, John Dewey. He said education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself. You know, and honestly, the whole idea of 21st century skills and competencies is, are we doing enough in the K-12 environment so that really kids are ready to be productive either in college or in career? Some of these others stand out to me as well. Alvin Toffler, the illiterate of the 21st century will be not those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Pretty powerful statements. And, you know, even current folks, Tony Wagner, well, the world simply no longer cares about what you know. What the world cares about, what the competitive advantage is what you do with what you know. So engaging students in a learning management system that allows them to be content creators is a vital part of really helping them in their quest to be 21st century learners. I like this one in particular. Technology won't replace teachers, but teachers who use technology will probably replace teachers who do not. Wouldn't you agree with that? We strongly believe in that. Our platform still puts the teacher front and center. The teacher makes the decisions. We just give the teacher all that he and she needs to really be effective. If you think about it, a library that's filled with aligned content that's tagged in multiple ways. Data reports that are useful at the classroom level. Those are all important technology tools of our platform that don't replace teachers, that just give teachers those tools.
And before you move on, I just want to bring up one that was dear to my heart in Houston. If a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. I think when you're in a district where the diversity is daunting and the different levels of support that students have or don't have in their households are challenging, then it's very difficult for teachers to address all the different ranges and levels of the students. And so technology is a great equalizer, but more importantly, if we're not preparing them to learn and to be productive in the society by using technology, we're hardly preparing them correctly for being productive and being successful in this century, in the workplace and in their careers, right?
Yeah, there's an Alan November quote here. He's delivering a lunch session today and tomorrow with us, and he has a panel. But he says teachers need to stop saying hand it in and start saying publish it instead. Very powerful. So just a couple graphics, and then we're going to walk through, similar with screenshots, on how the platform can support this notion of 21st century skills and competencies. So lots of different organizations have identified 21st century skills. What tends to bubble up to the surface are that there are 4 C's. Y'all have heard them. The idea of critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication. So that's what Beatriz and I are going to talk with you about. This slide talks about some competencies. I know it's tough to see. Again, the course is set up so that you can pull this presentation down. Certainly use it any way that you'd like. But in terms of communicating, are we helping students with both written language and oral language? Our platform has a lot of tools to do that. With collaboration, are we allowing students to collaborate with their peers, with folks outside the classroom? Our LMS starts to provide for that as well. The notion of critical thinking. Are you allowing for some flexibility in the way that students demonstrate their mastery? So beyond just simply asking students to type back a response, are you giving them tools to creatively respond through video, through audio, through Web 2.0 content creation tools, those types of things? And then finally, creativity. Does one student's work look completely different than another student's work, but together they demonstrate that they got it, that they got the intent of your lesson? That's a measure of creativity in your classroom. So a couple things that we want to show you around this first C of communication. So in its learning, everywhere throughout the assignments, throughout the tasks, throughout the lesson planning tool, there's what is called a rich text editor. That rich text editor, many of you are familiar with. You use it all the time with Word. You're able to format text. But there are other tools that are part of our rich text editor. Today's kids, even adults, communicate with emojis. You certainly have that capability on the rich text editor. You also have the ability on our rich text editor to add media as your response. So it can be images, it can be audio, it can be a combination of audio and video. And then we also have an embed tool directly on that rich text editor so that you're able to embed content that a student or a teacher might have created on some Web 2.0 tool like Padlet or ThingLink or BlendSpace, any of those tools that we know our teachers are using more often. App library. We work directly with our customers. We pre-populate our platform with some apps, But each of our customers' app library is unique based on the tools that they want their teachers to use. Our platform allows for these apps to be quickly added to the library. Along with that, we have a messaging and notification system that's native to the platform. So as a teacher, I can immediately communicate to parents, I can communicate to my students, other teachers, groups that I'm involved in directly from the platform. And when I do that, you're automatically notified from your device. So from your phone and your app, you're notified, hey, you got a message. Log on to itslearning to see what that message is. Good way to start using some of the communication tools. Discussions, conferences all sit there, portfolios, blogs, all great tools to help reinforce this sea of communication. So collaboration. Online communities are a part of our platform, and all your profiles can use these. So teachers can spin up online communities and invite participants. So I'm a faculty and I want to organize, a fundraiser. I can immediately spin up an online community and invite my fellow colleagues to be part of that. I'm a student and I want to study for the end of chapter test that's coming up. I can quickly launch an online community and I can invite my peers into that online community and we can collaborate immediately that way. So that's one feature. Messaging, again, that I shared with you. Tasks, and this is important here. So all of us are always asked this. Do you integrate with Google Apps for Education? The answer is, Ernesto, the answer is? Yes, the answer is yes. So collaboration is an important piece to Google and to the Google Apps for Education. So not only do we integrate completely with Google, but also with Microsoft Office 365 as well. Real simple, you have the ability to collaborate with Google Docs, and then you also have the ability to collaborate with all those other open libraries that you might be using. Some teachers are using Dropbox. We integrate with that, as well as Google Drive and OneDrive as well. So that idea of collaborating with those cloud-based areas certainly exists. Discussions, conferences, surveys, another strong piece to how we support collaboration.
Let's move it.
Critical thinking. Beatriz talked about the library. The library also allows you to grab things and save them in your own personal library, in your own collection. Rubrics are built in, this idea of really getting a better idea of what the expectation is on completing an assignment. So we have this capability with rubrics. And then the calendar is synced with all of the plans that teachers develop on the platform. So when you're building for your class, keep in mind that when you add dates to those lesson plans, they're populating a student's calendar as well. So the days of expecting students to write in a paper planner are all gone with a platform like ours. Creativity, I mentioned the rich text editor and all the pieces to that and the integration to that. And then just one last piece, we have a native e-portfolio and blog tool that's part of the platform also. All right, your next question. How can a learning platform like itslearning help facilitate 21st century skills for students in your district? Again, that's on the course. Give you just a moment. Anyone would like to answer that? We certainly have a time just to kind of soak up a minute or so. Maybe share something that you might be doing that stands out around 21st century skills.
Or what are some of the ways that you're using apps today in your classrooms to promote student creativity, student productivity, and to provide students with an opportunity to demonstrate that they have learned, besides from grades, right? Besides from exams and tests, something that is more than just a score.
Thank you.
I know in our school district, we really like to have our students demonstrate. We feel that sometimes students receive information better from other students. Like, I can say things like, you know, in college, be prepared to do a lot of reading on your own. And so then when a student comes up and makes a presentation on information that they got and maybe showed in a different way, Prezi, anything like that, that they can do on their own and then come and present to a class, students tend to pay more attention to that.
Yes. And more importantly, you're providing them with an opportunity to demonstrate what they have learned, which is so much richer than getting a score, right? But does a number tell you about what a student has learned? But when you have an opportunity to build objects and the students have an opportunity to create something, then you have additional data that informs and supports what is it that they have learned and how does it apply to reality, right?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Becky Navarre from Fort Worth. We had a student-teacher panel for our principals last week, and we had a 5th grader on there, and he was very ADHD, very active and moving around. But he told us that he liked his teacher using itslearning because before that, he was very frustrated, this is his words, that it took him an hour to do his homework. And since his teacher started using itslearning, he was able to videotape himself answering his question, and it took 5 minutes, so he was able to be unfrustrated, his words, and go out and play after school instead of working an hour on homework.
Thank you, Becky.
Nice. Okay, moving along, we're going to get to the next section. So section 3, this topic is all around data and reporting to target student improvement. So some slides again, get the idea. I kind of like quotes. There's one in particular that stands out to me. So Hattie, y'all familiar with Hattie? I think this is actually a good one that should be on a t-shirt. You know, this idea of setting up data dens and setting up a designated room in your school site for teachers to come and explore data is all very important. But Hattie says something neat. He says, educators should know thy impact. You know, and there's no better way than to see that data on a just-in-time basis. And I hope that we've been getting our point across. Some of the tools in our platform are specifically for the teacher. And what we're going to do here is start to show you the various data reports that are useful and helpful at that most critical level, at the classroom and student level. We certainly provide more analytics and data for district office, central office staff, but the idea of promoting this idea that teachers should be aware of the impact that they're having on students is vital and important.
Right.
Once you find the truth, you have to put the humanity back into it. So certainly once you look at the data, you have to make sense of it and then start to teach appropriately. So these slides that are coming up next are going to talk with you a little bit and demonstrate and show for you some of the ways that we provide data reports. So, for the teacher, lots of different views here. Gradebook, learning objective reports, I mentioned a bit of that. The idea of individual learning plans, the idea of focusing on individual students is a capability here with our platform. Working in assessment portfolios, being able to drop things that are assignments from a course on itslearning into a student's assessment portfolio so that they're now creating a documentation of the work that they're doing in their course that they can carry with them year after year. Alignment reports, assignment reports. We're going to show you a few of these. For the learner, Heather can immediately go into her grade book. She can see how she's progressing. She can look at her learning objectives and see which standard she's having performance mastery on and which standard she has to struggle with. And she also can look at any individual learning plans that she might have. And then finally, for the school leader and district administrator, lots of different reports. some just around logins, who's logging in, how often, what profile, what time of day, all of those things to start to measure return on investment, whether or not this LMS is actually being used or not.
And what's interesting about this last report is that as a teacher, you can see how many students have been using what materials and how much time did they spend on a particular item. And then you can start looking at the trends. So if we move forward to the grade book, and explain to that, we'll show you how you'll be able to see in the grade book who are the students that are progressing faster. And if you put those two together, who's using what materials and how much time they're spending on what, and who are the students that are progressing, you begin to see some interesting trends.
So our grade book is refreshed for back to school. The developers sitting in the Boston office had a lot of focus groups over the last 6 months of US customers. The grade book for back to school is phenomenal. These are some screenshots of it. Profile pictures allow you to quickly identify students. There are color codes based on performance. Light red meaning that the task was completed but not on time. So at a glance you can start to see, hey, who are the kids that are completing but turning in late? There are icons for submission notes, things in italic that give you messages. Headers that are also italicized that give you information. There are exempts that allow you to exempt an assessment or change an item if a student retook it. Keyboard navigation. Here's the trend reports. So this is kind of cool. So take a look at this screen for a second and look at the first student up there. Trends in grades over time. And the question we have is this student improving or struggling? So at a glance, if you have a line graph going up and down, there's some issues going on with that student that will help you to identify that you need to intervene in some way or another. Along with that, grade distribution, students all over the board from a 60% to 100%. So where are the struggle points? And folks, this grade book allows you to drill into each of those. So those color dots, I could drill in and look at that particular assignment, look at how the student completed that assignment to see where those struggles are. Progress on tasks. Again, another question?
So what's interesting here is we all struggle too with dropouts. In some of our districts, we struggle with dropouts, assignments, engagement. Are the students coming to class? Are they engaging their learning? This is what the scattered charts and the progress charts can help us with. We can very quickly see if a student is struggling or not attending sufficiently, and we can do something about it before it's too late, right?
And those are all teacher views now. So that question is there. We're going to try to move through the last section, but please answer that. Again, it'll enter you into that raffle. The last section.
So here is the data. This is actual data from the Houston Independent School District. And phase 1 schools started in 2013-14, and the second line is the comparison school. So here's the Power Up schools, comparison schools. So if you click once, Bob,
Yep.
Power Up schools, comparison schools, and keep going, Power Up schools and comparison schools. What's interesting about this is that the comparison schools, some of them were our best high schools, and we still had a significant difference in performance in English 1 within a year and a half of implementing this technology. Now, if you move to Algebra 1, of course, our math scores were a lot lower in general. We are not there, right? We're struggling, but we're still improving. The Power Up schools consistently outgraded the non-Power Up schools. And then the same thing for phase 2 schools. If you move on, the Power Up schools perform consistently better than the non-Power Up schools, and the same thing for English 1. Now, are we happy? Are we there yet? No, we're not. But what this proves to you is that there is progress. And when you have challenges, such as, for example, a large urban district, high minority, high low income, a lot of differences between our students, what technology can do is help you bridge those gaps. And so in addition to that, we also did focus groups, and there's a quote from a student. It was very touching to go to the schools and talk to the students and ask them, how is this making a difference in your life? And for the students, it meant that they were in the driver's seat. That with this device and this technology, the LMS in their hands, they were in charge, regardless of how good the teacher, how much support the parents can give them in the house. They were in charge and they had access to best quality content to do something about their teaching and learning. But there's a number of things that happen in the district. The 24/7 access, the students said that was critical. The positive campus culture was an unintended consequence. We put so much effort and so much organization around this initiative that unintended positive consequence was that the school culture improved significantly, student engagement levels improved significantly. We created master courses, so no matter what kind of a teacher you are, where in your progress as a teacher, they started with a good, solid course that was ready-made for you, and then if you're a teacher that is ready to create more on top of that, fabulous. So we provided the scaffolding for the teachers, and we had schools that went from a D to a B in 3 years. Sharpstown was called the Dropout Factory. It was featured on PBS Dropout Nation, and they featured 4 of our students. Sharpstown High School went from a D to a B. Is this just the technology? No, it's not just the technology. So if you move to the next, it is a learning ecosystem, and an ecosystem is not just systems, it's not just technology. It's an interdependent group of people and systems that work together to create an optimal learning environment. And so our role is to provide the system, but along with the system, to provide all the supports that are needed for the people that are really doing the hard work in the trenches. So are we there yet? As you can see by our grades, no, we're not there yet. We have a long way to go, right? Because 21st century readiness is much more than improved scores. We can't afford to miss any of them. We know that our students who drop out end up badly, right? At best, they are poor forever. In many cases, they end up in jail. What we want is much more than improved scores. We want agents, free agents in democracy that are active and collaborative and that are successful and who can choose their future, right? So, the last question is, how might having a comprehensive content and learning management system, an ecosystem of people and systems to support teaching and learning? I hope you put it in your survey. I think we're out of time.
Yeah, but honestly, folks, do finish those discussion prompts in that survey. And please stop by the booth, 2352. We'll be happy to walk you through on a personal basis, live on the platform. Really at any level, any type of organization that you'd like to see, we'd be happy to demonstrate. It's been a pleasure talking with you all, and enjoy the ISTE conference.
Thanks for coming.